Openwest. My name is Jeremy Curcio, and as stated, I'll be giving you a brief review of the human interface guideline for Dummies edition. Start with a little bit about who I am. Software developer from Baltimore, Maryland, born and raised. That's the pretty side of Baltimore. Not stuff you've seen on the news. A lot of Baltimore like this. So face the internet and face value. I work for Planet Advertising, which is actually right behind the Curcio. You're writing an iOS app since early 2008. iOS 2.0, sent out the email, I applied, rest of history, so to say. In my free time, I play hockey. And I'm also a Pokemon master. Yeah, still play. Too much, actually. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of app design. Apple has a lot of rules about what they want their third-party app to look like, how they want them to function. We're going to go over what they do want, what they don't want, make it a little easier. And talk about what Apple expects. It's actually directly outlined in the human interface guideline. So, kind of reviewing them there. And we'll also go over what's going to guarantee a rejection email. So, how many of us have submitted an application to the iTunes store? How many of us read the human interface guidelines? I'm actually surprised I got hands on that. Usually everyone's like, what? Why? No big deal. Human interface guidelines explains everything that Apple wants to see in your application and everything they don't want to see. It's a really important document. It's not a fun read, but it's a read nonetheless. Throughout the presentation, we'll see this big red apple. It's actually a lot smaller, but it's a red apple. When you see this, it's something that is almost a guaranteed rejection. Not every reviewer is the same, so you're going to be fine with something. But if there's an apple, probably should want to avoid it, else you're going to be rewriting or redesigning your application later so you can read the thing. Let's talk about what Apple expects from your application. Your app should be able to have three main focuses. It should have deference. Your users should be able to quickly see and understand how to use your application right when they launch it. There should be clarity. All your buttons, your inputs, your labels, your text, they should be easy to read. Easy to read, easy to interact with. They don't really want anything mushed together, overlapping. Just keep it clean. Your functionality should dictate your design. Your design should not dictate your functionality. The last thing that they want is to depth. They want you to use your APIs that are available to you. They want your animations. They want motion. You want layers moving in and out. Just make your apps look good. That's the key that they're looking for. Obviously, not every application is going to need motion and animation, but if your app calls for it, throw it in. Nice little touch. They really appreciate it. I have a couple examples of different applications. So your left is Fuely. It's great for tracking your fuel mileage. Just looking at it, you can see, okay, well, I've been getting not great fuel mileage in my Subaru. It's actually very easy to read. Everything is pointed out for you. Very nice. The second one is the Nest application in the center. All your text, incredibly readable, right at the flash. The icons are deliberate, and they explain what function is behind them. And then the last one to your right is the Breeze application. You'll notice that there's the opaque view underneath, or the semi-translucent view underneath of the main circle. Just giving you a depth of field, depth of vision. When you launch the application, the blue spins around, your little white indicator where you should be that day comes around. Lots of motion, lots of depth. Really a good visual application. Since it's very simple, they are able to key off on different animations. So UI kit. UI kit is what every developer needs. It's your friend. Every UI element baked into iOS is available within UI kit. Caveat, there are a couple small things that we don't publicly API, but everything that you're going to need in the application is going to be in UI kit. Use it to your advantage. Don't reinvent the wheel just to make a nav bar. It's there. Use it. There's a couple of different elements that you can find in the nav tab. There are views and buttons, labels, text inputs, all that. It's all within UI kit. Your app is viewed as a screen to Apple, not as a collection of elements. If you're designing your application that has a label here, a button here, you're not really embracing the screen mentality of your application. Apple wants you to think of it in a way of, this screen is a launch screen. This screen is my home screen. So keep that in mind as you're designing. It'll help you to avoid that later rejection email that we all need to get. When you're laying out your application, use size classes if they're available to you. If you're new to iOS 8, and they make it easy to make your app available for any screen size, between iPhone Portrait to iPad, landscape, and everything in between. It's just a great way to make sure that your application looks nice on every device without having to create a different storyboard for every single device. With your layout, maintain focus. As you're developing your application, you need to know, what am I trying to do? And remember that your users are also trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? If your focus is all over the place, your users aren't going to be able to follow along. They're going to get lost. They're going to delete your application. That's one user you're not going to have down the road. So try to keep your layout in place with what you want it to do. Put your important elements on the top left. Apple asked for this because that's the first place that your eye looks. I found that the bottom right is also good because that's usually where your user's thumb is going to be. So caveat on the red apple. Things that are really important to see, top left. If it's an interaction, bottom right might be better, but you're on the side of caution if you can go both ways in your design. Keep your layout consistent throughout the application. You want your user to feel like they're in the same application no matter what they're doing within the application. Keeping it consistent is a great way to do that. With consistency comes familiarity. With familiarity comes more use. The more your user uses your application, the more they're going to fall in love with it, the more likely they're going to tell their friends about it, and then the cycle continues. If you're confusing your user by switching up your layout, again, you're going to get that wiggly delete and one user gone. And last thing with the layout, your touch area should be a minimum of 44 pixels by 44, or 44 points by 44 points. This is about the minimum sensitivity that a typical user could be able to touch within daily usage. If you need for it to be smaller than either one, or smaller than 44 by 44 square, at least have one side be 44. That way you give your users the best area to touch. If you make your inputs smaller than 44 by 44, you're looking at a rejection email due to an intuitive design. Navigating throughout your application. Your users should always know where they are in the application. If they're drilling down through the music application, they know I'm at the album view. If they're looking through their email, they see that they're in a reply chain. At no point are you thinking, should I go back from here or should I go forward from here? Make sure your navigation is clean and concise and really tells your users where they are, what the next steps are going to be. Use navigation bars if you can. Not all applications are suited to navigation bars. Things like games, you really don't want a nav bar at the top of your game because it's just going to look out of place. For utility applications, data-driven things, put a navigation bar. Tab bars, they're great as well. They're good for applications with multiple categories of functionality. Again, like music apps, you can either look at your albums, your songs, your playlists, and you get to those different views by tapping the tab bar. Don't use tab bars just willy-nilly. Make sure that each section of your tab has its own distinct purpose. If you duplicate why people are touching the tab bar, you start to get into a gray area, which starts to lead into your guaranteed rejection. And whenever possible, try to avoid different paths at the same screen. You don't want to have two login buttons on your home page. You're going to just distract your user and they're not going to know which one to press. They'll end up touching one, but that's extra couple seconds that they spent where they could have been logged in. So here's an application with the use of a nav bar as well as a couple of elements. You can see very easily, you're in the New England section. You can either go home by touching the top right, or you can go back by touching the top left. You have your detail indicators on table view to say, if you touch this, you'll go to the next screen. Bonus. Interactivity. Keep the default touch actions. Things like you're selecting, you're scrolling, you're swiping, pinching and zooming. These are built into the OS. They've been there for going on 9 years. If you start to override their default function, your users are going to be confused. They're going to get lost. They're not going to know how to really function or navigate your application and how it functions. They're probably just going to delete it again. We don't want that. Apple does not want that. If you override a default touch, if you take that drag and make it be expand instead of scroll, enjoy your rejection email because that's going to come back to you every time. In fact, yeah, they don't mess around when it comes to touches. With gestures, don't make that the only way to complete an action within your application. Remember that some users do have disabilities, be it motion or lack of motor controls, due to old age, being a child. Don't assume that your user will be able to do a 3-finger swipe. Make sure there's a button somewhere that gives them the same opportunity to complete the action as that swipe action does. And avoid making complex gestures. If you're going to make your user double tap, swipe, and swipe back, they're not going to be able to follow it along, and you're going to get a rejection. If it takes more than one action to do it, it's probably better to put it in a button. Even complex gestures via Easter eggs. I actually had a rejection because I tried to put the Konami code in once, and they found it, and they were like, no, because this is a complex gesture. What if your user starts to find out about it, and then they're going to try to do it, it's not going to work. Rejection. I'm surprised it wasn't more about the Easter egg functionality, but that's neither here nor there. And again, avoid that because it's hard for people with disabilities, or people with children, stuff like that. And when in doubt, don't invent a new gesture. You have your swipes, you have your scrolls, you have your pinch to zoom. If that doesn't fit what you're trying to do, there's probably a good reason why it doesn't fit, and it might be better to just go ahead and throw in a button for it. Or one of your other UI kit elements like a slider, etc. Use the color within your application is also very, very important. You want to use colors to signify your interactivity with your application. With iOS 7 moving to a flat view, you lost your typical round and correct button. And now you just have text that click. If that's black and all the rest of your text is black, they're not going to know where to click to get to the next area of the application. You only want to add borders and backgrounds to your buttons when absolutely necessary. For example, in the iTunes Store, the Buy button has a border to it because it's within the table view cell, where if you touch the table view, you'll drill into the details of the application. But they want to make a way to quickly and easily download the application and get some money in their pocket. To signify that, we put the blue border around the price tag, telling you, this is a button, you can touch me. When you're using color, be alert to color blindness. This pertains more so to games than your typical utility applications because you're not usually jumping through colors as much in Advocate or in utilities. But avoid using colors that are common color pairs, common color blindness, like your red, green, blue pinks, or green yellows. Plenty of information on the internet as to how to work around color blindness. Even just putting in a colorblind mode that gives you a texture on top of the color is enough to keep Apple at bay and get your app approved into the store. Your color should enhance, it should not detract. We're not in the 70s anymore, tie-dye's kind of gone out of style. So don't be throwing in your green, your blue, your red, your yellow. Stick with 1 or 2 colors, keep your palette simple, keep it clean. Everyone will be happier again. And also, don't use the same color. Don't use the same color for static and interactive elements. You notice again in the little screenshot, the button is blue, the text is black. The blue being a different color tells the user, I can touch this to get a different action. If you had black on black, you're back in that same situation where it's just touchable, it kind of looks like it should be, maybe So here's a couple applications that, one, use color well, and one does not. So, to the left is the TeamSnap application that I actually use for my hockey team. You can see the use of color. There's the dark blue for the I'm going, maybe, and no buttons, and then on selected state. Once you select it, you get your green border that shows, hey, I interacted with this. When the text that says playoff 4 or 5Z, that's touchable as well. It'll draw you into the information about that team that you're playing. And it's a very precise color palette throughout. It's blues, whites, and the green to really pop. On the other side, we have the Bravo Poker app, which just kind of throws color at you without much consideration for readability. The yellow and the red for the buttons down here, they kind of look a little the same, especially with color blindness. You could see that fade away. And then with all their UI elements being blue, you have red, yellow, blue. It's kind of clashy. Keep your colors concise, keep your palette on point. It'll make Apple happy, it'll make you happy. I'll give you that proof. Using graphics within your application. For example, your app icon. You want your app icon to be unique, uncluttered, and clean. I use the Apple icons here. You can see exactly what they do. You have the speech bubble for messages, envelope for mail. Your calendar actually tells you what day it is. You want your icon to explain your application at a quick glance. You want it to be unique. You don't want to fall into the trap of thinking, or having you just think, oh, well, this is that application. No, you want to be original. You. Keep it uncluttered. Remember that it's going to be viewed at a screen size big once it's on the iTunes on your computer to very tiny in your settings application. You have a lot of elements, you have a lot of text. Once you get down to your setting size, all that's just going to blend together. You're going to have a little blob, a squiggly line on it. Nobody wants to enter that. Remember, your icon is your app's first impression. When it searches in the store, then your icon on the center. Make sure it looks nice. It'll help all of your users. Using graphics in your application. You have your bar icon, pictured here. Apple provides many of the icons for common tasks right there for you. You have your ads, your cameras, your deletes. Look through your library of what they have provided for you. There's about a 50-50 chance that they already provided an icon that's going to do or explain what you're trying to do. Use the standard icons only for their intended purpose. If you repurpose your icon, that's going to be a rejection email coming to you 7 to 10 days. So don't take your camera icon and make that be for captioning a photo. Camera is known to take or add a photo out of your library. If nothing's available from Apple, just create your own. If you use Apple as a guide, you'll see that they're very simple, basic, but they convey the point. If there's no way to do what you're trying to do via a picture, you just use text. It's available, go for it. Example, in the calendar application, how do you show today as an image? Can. So you just use the word today to let your users know. So take me to today. With the graphics, make sure you build for Retina. At this point, I doubt many people are supporting non-Retina displays. But don't forget that with the 6 Plus now you have the 3X display. So you want to go for 2X, 3X, and why not non-Retina? Within your graphics, don't replicate Apple products, Apple trademarks, or Apple icons or screenshots. That was another lesson I learned the hard way. I put a MacBook in a game I made, and they picked it out, and they said, this screen right here, get that Apple out of there. It's their stuff. Don't use it. You do not have permission. The only permission for Apple images that you have is see made for iPhone or available in the iPhone store or App Store. These are images that they're allowed to use. So with your text, every word in your application is creating a conversation with the user. Your tone that you use is important. You want to be friendly, but also professional. That's another stickler on Apple. They don't want you to be buddy-buddy with your user, but they also don't want you to be talking down to your user. It's kind of hard for them to say this is a rejection item because it's kind of subjective, but they do. So just keep that in mind as you put together the copy on your application. Keep the terminologies that your users are going to understand. So if you're making a medical app and the doctors, go ahead, you can use normal exercises. However, if you're making an app for Couch 5K to get people interested in running, plantar fasciitis, people aren't going to understand what that is probably. Keep it to foot pain. Remember who your audience is and make sure that you're writing for them. And throughout your application, keep it simple. and each word matters. Keep it short, but keep it meaningful. Apple doesn't like long-winded text blocks that say registering gives you access to the application. Registering gives you access to the application works pretty well. They want to dress it up a little bit, but overall, that's close to what you want. If you don't know what your audience is going to be specifically, try to write at around a 6th grade reading level. That is the US standard for anything government related. It's a pretty good guideline to go by. That way you know that the majority of your users are going to be able to read and interact with your application. So let's look at the text. On the left, settings application. Telling us, do we want to use the location? Instead of saying, never use my location because I don't want you to have my information, it just says never. While using the app, instead of, you can use my location, but only when I'm in the application. And always instead of, yeah, go for it. It's very concise. It tells you exactly what each option is without being long-winded. On the right is an application called Flavor Wheel. You see a lot of text, specifically in the table views. The data that's being outputted is much too long for the table. If you're looking for a pharmacy, you don't need to know the pharmacy number and the city that it's in. Especially when you're searching by zip code, you know, or you should know, what that city is. Much easier to say Walmart pharmacy or CVS pharmacy rather than trying to give all that information and have it get truncated. With your iOS elements, try not to mix and match. What I mean by that is use elements from a single iOS version. Not really an issue now that we're out of that flat transition. But if you're building an application, try not to go flat and work at the same time. Right now, Apple prefers that you go flat because it's the latest that they've been working with. Give that reason for me. Use the same style throughout the application. Try to keep the fonts consistent, your graphics consistent, your color consistent. Your users should know that they're in your application at all times. There should never really be a question of, did I change? Because this looks completely different. And don't create custom elements and standard actions. This is another very nice way to get rejected. So if you need a slider, use a slider. Feel free to customize it as you wish, but don't create a new slider completely different. It's there for you. It's in UIKit. We gave it to you for a reason. You should use it. And take advantage of iOS technologies. I'm not sure why this is in the human interface guideline, but they threw it in there, so I'm going to forward the information on. We want you to make sure that you're using multitasking, voice-over accessibility, plugging in the APIs such as Game Center and the Cloud Kit. They just really want a seamless experience for the user from beginning to end throughout their platform. And to wrap it up, use Apple's apps as a guidance. If they were approved at some point, be it by Johnny Ive or Scott Curcio for some reason. So they know, or you know, this is what they're looking for because they did it. Apple's opinion is law. There is a rare occasion that you can reply back to your rejection and get it overturned, but whatever they say goes 95% of the time. Keep it simple. Again, iOS is a pretty basic platform. Powerful, but basic in terms of use. No need to overcomplicate it. And Apple provides plenty of icons to use them for your nav bars, your tab bars, etc. Pretty much wrap up. And does anybody have any questions? We got one. Yes.
Yeah, so one of the gestures that was up there that's kind of common, I guess, is the shake gesture. What's kind of your feeling and sentiment about like the shake gesture in general?
I don't like it.
I don't either.
I would prefer to just have a button for shaking. Typically, shaking is used for in games to roll dice, in utility applications to randomly pick something. All those things can be done via button. And if I'm sitting in my car, I'm shaking my phone, I just feel kind of stupid. So if you absolutely need shake, for example, undo, you don't really want to have that button on the screen at all times. Use it, but keep that in mind. What's going on with that?
Thanks.
Yes.
So when making graphics are across platforms, not just iOS,
Right.
do you do like different graphics for each platform, or I mean, do you make custom ones that will go on each platform? Or?
That really depends. If it's a utility application, try to skin it to your platform that you're going to be on. Your Android users aren't going to understand if you have a table view with a detailed disclosure into it, like the eye questions or the blue eye. Same thing with Android coming back to iOS. You use some of their native stuff, it's just not going to flow right. But for games, absolutely. Create your own set, go all out, create your experience. But it really just depends on your application and what it does. Yes.
You showed for kind of navigation buttons and interactions. What about for like data visualization? Are there some things that are more acceptable that will be accepted than others?
It all comes back to the clarity of your data. They prefer for it to be on a table view or a collection view. But if your data doesn't really fit in a table, then you have another way to show it, pie chart or whatever. As long as what you're doing is intuitive, go for it. That's pretty much what they review on. Their reviews last for 5 minutes. So if they can't understand what you're trying to do in those 5 minutes, you're probably not doing something right.
How do you feel about frameworks like Centric Touch, things that aren't really use?
I don't know that framework specifically. I didn't use 320 way back in the day, Facebook's framework. Yeah, I don't know.
So, another question, if you're building an app that primarily interacts with a web service that has to be logged into, you have to provide Apple with an account that they can test in?
Yes, when you submit your application, there's other information field. Provide them a username and login. That way they're able to get past that initial screen to actually test your application. If you don't provide that, they're going to reply back with you need this information to go on. Yes, sir.
Do you have any experience with the Touch Events API if you're not doing a native app, you're doing a responsive web application?
I have not done anything with web apps.
Okay.
That's about it. I gotta thank you all for your time. Slides are going to be available at jcurcio.com. Shortly to the